Today on the show, I'm talking with Noel Wilson, founder of Intelligenic and a lifelong technologist with roots deep in the heart of Silicon Valley. Noel's career has taken him from consulting and product management to the cutting edge of AI, where he's now tackling one of the industry's biggest bottlenecks, the speed and scale of software development. In our conversation, we dig into his journey from early coding experience to launching a company that's rethinking the entire SDLC, software development lifecycle, using AI. We talk about the importance of customer feedback, the lonely but exhilarating path of entrepreneurship, and how innovation is the only way to survive in a hyper competitive landscape. Whether you're an engineer or founder or just curious about how AI will reshape the way we build technology, this one is packed with insight. Let's get into it. Noel, welcome to Peaking. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Wyatt.
Absolutely. Excited to talk with you, a veteran of Silicon Valley. Actually, not sure if I should use that term. Someone that had about your level of experience preferred the term seasoned. How do you feel about either of those?
I don't give much thought to seasoned versus veteran. Seasoned sounds like a steak,
Yeah, I
but
agree.
whatever you want to go with. It's all
All
good.
right, a good deal. Yes, maybe just getting started is better. You are the founder of Intelligenic. Excited to talk more about what you're building, but it took a lot to get where you are today, and you've held quite a few roles with some of the Silicon Valley beasts, Oracle, Dell. I mean, these are enormous names, and quite a few others. How did this all get started? Were you always just interested in tech and you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, or you wanted to be a corporate guy following in the father's footsteps? How did you get to kind of where you are?
Yeah. Well, I've always lived in Silicon Valley for the most part, So when I was growing up, it was when those tech companies that you started to mention, some of them didn't even exist at the time. Many of them were just getting started themselves. The Apple was just getting started, and Intel was just getting started. And so it was always around. Everything doing, had some sort of influence. I remember being one of the first families on the block to get an IBM PC, and I remember I didn't really think anything of it. There's no significance to me because it was just, like I said, it was just kind of what went on where I grew up. I didn't do much with it other than, play games, but, I was playing online games, like one of the first simple ones. It was like basically text-based stuff. So like the text-based adventure, you see a goblin standing in the corner. What do you gonna do? Stuff like that. So it was always around, always had some kind of technology and things like that. My mom was very much involved in technology, and the rest of our family was involved in technology too. So it just was part of life, growing up. And now, with that said, I didn't know for sure whether I was going to go into tech. It was an option. I didn't even really know what it meant, quite frankly. But you got exposure to it pretty early on here. I remember writing my first computer program in junior high school, and it was a simple print program, like a print statement for putting out the theme song to the Brady Bunch. Believe me, I didn't watch the Brady Bunch first run. I'm not that old, but it was still on TV a bit, and so and I knew that theme song by heart. So I was like, oh well, they want me to do Reddit program. That's what I'm going to do. And so I always got, like I said, technology was always there. It was always present and everything. And you just kind of grew up with it and moved through life that way. And then eventually I went to university and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I did a lot of different stuff before I realized that, I really do need to get serious about what I want to do in my career. And that's when I decided to go into technology, computer science, but with a business focus. And so I got a degree at St. Clair University. It's called Decision and Information Sciences, which is a bring together both business as well as computers. It's pretty important to me because just writing code for the sake of writing code without, an actual outcome in mind, trying to solve a problem didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And so I was very business oriented, which led me to really my first true career, which was going into technology as a consultant. I joined Anderson Consulting, again, dating myself a little bit because that no longer exists. It became Accenture eventually. for those of you who don't know, Anderson Consulting out there. But I love that idea of being a consultant because it gave me the ability to directly work with the end user, the people that had a problem that we were trying to solve, and we could apply a technical solution to it. And it was always new. I wasn't, once you solved that problem, you typically moved on to the next client and you would deal with that new challenge. And I love that, something new and fresh, so that was really the start of the true career, that was very much hands-on building software solutions. That eventually I was responsible for leading teams of people that would build software solutions. Then that led to me being responsible for the business as a whole. And as I went through that whole journey in my career, it became very apparent to me that there were some significant challenges, and still are significant challenges, with software development and the process associated with that. First and foremost, we just don't have enough qualified people to meet the demand for all the software that people want us to build. That hasn't really changed, even with the emergence of AI that is making us more proficient at what we do. We're now just trying to do more of that stuff. We still don't have enough people to be able to help us with that. Well, it remains to be seen, how AI will change that over time. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when we are working on a software initiative, it's usually highly manual in nature, which is really surprising when you think about the technical aspect of the solutions that we're building, that we're not really taking advantage of means to automate that, even with, like I said, the emergence of AI. We're starting to do more of it for sure, but not nearly taking advantage of it to its fullest extent. And because it's highly manual, it still leads to extreme inefficiencies, high costs, and long delivery times. And so when I decided to start Intelligenic, I was considering, do I build this company where it's more akin to what I'm used to, which is consulting? Do we use a platform to help the consulting services that I provide to make us just more efficient, being able to build those software solutions? Or do I just focus on the platform? And what I realized is that if I just went down this path of focusing only on offering consulting services, that I wouldn't truly fix the macro issues, that it's still highly manual, really inefficient, lots of costs associated, and long delivery timelines, which doesn't allow us to build all the software that we're being asked to build. And when we do, the quality is low because of all of these challenges of just not being able to produce the high quality software in the time frame that needs to align with stakeholders' needs and requirements. It leads to some pretty significant costs across the board. From, an overall industry perspective, we're talking trillions of dollars in, high cost, low quality software that gets built. And then you got to manage that. And then you may not be able to deal with the additional features that you're getting asked to because you're just frankly dealing with tech debt the whole time. Or in some cases, you never build the solution because it's just too technically complicated and too costly. So I realized that consulting wasn't the way I needed to go. I needed to focus on the platform that truly solved the problem. And that's the genesis with creating Intelligenic. And we're at Intelligenic. We utilize AI to automate the software development lifecycle comprehensively. And that includes discovery, design, generation, quality assurance testing, deployment. Everything that goes into that beyond just code gen itself. Was I always thinking about being an entrepreneur? No. Maybe a little bit, there's always been like steps along the way, like when I was a kid, I would go out and go through the neighborhood and mow lawns and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of entrepreneurialism there, but I think it's kind of a cultural expectation in the US and really in a lot of countries that you go get some higher learning to figure out some type of skill that you can then offer to someone else that runs a business. And then you go work for that person or that organization so that you can continue to build on those skills and become better at what you do, more proficient, and make money and so forth. Well, there's always a lot of talk about founding companies and being entrepreneurial. I know that we have a lot of the support groups in place to really foster that sort of development. It's on the individual. The individual is the one that needs to take the step and make it happen. And it's hard to take that step and make it happen when culturally it's viewed as this very risky thing. I'm not saying it's not risky because it is, but it's not viewed as favorably as one might think. people want you to go through the normal steps, get your degree and learn a technical skill or some other type of skill and apply that and work for somebody and gain more skills as you go about doing that. We don't really have this group that's like, well, here's how you go build a business. You have to go figure it out. Right. And so ultimately, after 28 years, of doing the normal path, building my career and my skills through the university path and then working for somebody, I just recognized that I was finally ready to create my own business and that I had learned enough and I had gained enough experience that I could apply all of those things that I had learned, all of the good things, the things that could be improved, and really make a different kind of business and make the business in the right way. And then with the emergence of AI, I realized that I could solve a problem that I was already very much deeply entrenched in trying to solve, but I could do it in a different way by creating that platform that would make a true difference so that we could finally meet the demand for all the software that we're being asked to build it and to do so in much higher quality and with greater speed and greater proficiency so that we can reduce overall costs and get the software built that we just never were able to do.
Do you feel like your entrepreneurial journey was kind of spurred by the technological advancements with the large language models? Do you feel like you were always thinking about starting something, or did you see the problem for quite a while and then suddenly a light bulb went off and I can build a solution now?
Yeah, the problem was always present. And, it's a good thing when you're a consultant or you're running a consulting business, because that means you have no shortage of demand for your services because people don't have the capacity to build all the software that they want to. And they also don't have the expertise to be able to do that. So it was always great. As far as doing something different, that had been a culmination of just all those years of experience. And then finally leading up to transition where, I left my last employer and I was finally realized I was ready to do something on my own and that the technology was in place to be able to support solving that problem that I'd always been dealing with all along. And so that started my journey with Intelligenic. And that's when I explored how we could do this, which led me to where we are today, where I have a product in market. I've got my, working on getting my first customer signed, and, having this amazing platform that is really, is positioned to solve all those problems that I talked about.
Silicon Valley is known to be the place to start a business in the tech industry, at least. And you were at a lot of large companies. Do you feel like you interacted with the VC world much at all throughout your career, or do you feel like the worlds are just completely separate?
I mean, living in Silicon Valley for most of my life, it's not completely separate. There's plenty of people that I've run into that have been in venture capital. Early in my career, I was involved in a venture capital incubator, which is no longer around, so don't try to go look it up. It's called the Castling Group, if you can even find anything on it. And we were, pioneering the concept of providing not only investment capital, but the expertise to help people accelerate their ability to build their product and take it to market. So I had always got some exposure to it, and I knew that I was very interested in that and wanted to explore that further as my career has progressed. Even with some of the enterprise organizations that I've been part of, it's not uncommon for these large companies to have divisions that focus on making investments in up and coming startups or even through it as well. So there's always a little bit of that kind of engagement and interaction. And then even prior to me starting Intelligenic, I invested as a limited partner in a venture capital firm. So I started to get even more exposure or hands-on like what the venture capital world looks like and, what to expect.
In the startup world, you often hear people working endless hours. Being on both sides now, do you feel like you were utilized 100% of your bandwidth in the corporate world versus what your schedule looks like as a founder?
Yeah, it's interesting because as a founder, you have no option. There's no off switch. I dream about it. That's what it's like, and anybody that's a founder, I'm sure can attest to that, right? It's like, it's always, in your mind, right? There were certainly cases throughout my career where it was like that, for certain organizations, but it's easier to turn it off because you're not invested in the same way as you are as a founder. It's not to say you're not committed. And I do not say that I wasn't committed, because I absolutely was, and I certainly put a lot of time and a lot of effort into the things that I was working on previously, in my corporate career. But it's just a different kind of engagement, when you're a founder. I was dreaming about it last night.
Yeah, never.
That's a pretty common experience for sure.
Do you fall back on your coworkers or people that you're building with much more in this, very small team environment? Or does it feel like still somewhat of a lone wolf journey? I mean, you are not alone in this. It is, you have a couple co-founders and partners here, but do you feel that loneliness that comes with starting a business as opposed to, being part of an enterprise?
Yeah. As a founder, you always feel that way. It is a pretty lonely proposition that you committed yourself to. Even with partners, even with the team, it's just a different kind of experience that, unless you are a founder, you really don't get to fully experience. Now, with that said, do I delegate and do I get everybody involved? 100%. I can't do it all. Well, you only scale so far, and so you need to be reliant on your head of engineering, your head of product, UX, UI design, your head of product management and data strategy, your software engineers, and others that are helping you from an administrative perspective, plus your advisors. That's one of the first things that you recognize, is that you can only do so much and you only know so much. When I started this thing, I was a first-time founder. There were plenty of things I didn't know. This was like startup university. I had to go out and find that information. I had to talk to people. I had to get advisors. I talked to other people that had done it before. There's a group that I'm part of. It's called the Founders Network. Huge advocate of it. It's a group of like-minded individuals that are founding companies, just like it sounds, where you talk about what you're going through. It includes people like myself, first-time founders, to people that have had several multi-billion-dollar exits as well. And so you have this wide range of experience that you can draw upon, and that's super helpful as a founder, because otherwise you sit there in isolation and you won't know for sure. And that's the last thing you want to do, is spend time on something if you can't quickly find an answer, because that's the key element to having success in a startup. It's your ability to execute with speed and make decisions with speed. Right. So the more informed and experienced people that you can surround yourself with, whether those are people that work directly with you or advisors or, informal advisory relationships, the better served you'll be and the more successful you'll be as well.
How much of your past experience do you feel really was useful in your entrepreneurial journey? How much of the corporate world translates over?
Oh, all of it. It's just, I could not do this without that experience. Are there things that I do differently sometimes? Yeah, of course. You're going to make it your own, and you're going to learn from things that could be improved in your previous experience. You're going to take the stuff that worked really well and you're going to apply it. Right. So it's all stuff that you can utilize that helps you with what you need to do next, in any journey, whether that's if I were to go back and work for somebody or if I was going to start another company. It's all positive. You need to be able to draw from that. And the people that are the most successful are the ones that are able to, that do have that breadth, to draw from, that can, really learn from it and make things happen. That's the key. Absolutely learn from it. Even as you are going through that founding journey, recognize when you made a mistake, and that's okay, but learn from it and don't make that same mistake twice. You're going to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. It's just the way things go.
So Intelligenic, you are working to automate the SDLC for the technology and where it was when you started and where it is now, even with the models improving just in 2 years. I mean, it's been pretty dramatic just from my end as a talent professional, being able to analyze and build campaigns and just the simple act of recruiting. I don't know how much of this career is left, honestly. It's coming fast. I imagine you see the same thing on your end. How different is this than you may have predicted? The technological advancements, the AI's capability.
Than I expected, for sure. You were spot on. Things have changed so dramatically from when I started my journey 2 years ago. I'm trying to think which was the model that we were working with from OpenAI at the time. I don't want to say GPT 3.5 or something like that. 4 was
If
just
that,
coming out or something like
it
that.
might have been just 3.
Pretty early. And you just think about the advancements that's happened with not only OpenAI, but with Anthropic, with XAI, with Google, down the list of all the different big AI providers as well. Things are moving very rapidly, and which means that as an entrepreneur that's building a company that's dependent on these AI technologies, you need to move at the same pace. And so what we've done is we've created our architecture in such a way that allows us to be agnostic when it comes to models. So we can put in whatever model is the most appropriate for the workflow that we're coming to automate, and we can do so rapidly. Like literally, it takes us, maybe an hour less to change that. You got to deploy the model, make all that stuff happen. Less than that, sure. And so you have to be able to match the pace, key, right? To ensure that you can remain competitive and relevant in what you do. And you have to stay on top of what this technology is capable of as well. I think it's exciting. I love that it's moving this fast, because for much of my career, we had these slow but steady incremental changes in technology, and it's a completely different world now.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. How do you run evaluations for the different models for the different tasks?
The way that we do it is that let me tell you a little bit more about the platform and the product and how it works. So the Intelligenic product is called Product Studio. And what it does is it allows us to take inputs from end users that are looking to create software development lifecycle outputs. Things like product requirement definition, high fidelity screens, maybe screen mockups, the code, test scripts, you name it. There's a whole litany of various different SDLC work products that they would typically have to produce. But in a world without Intelligenic, they're manually creating it. Maybe they're using some models and some tools and helping them to dynamically do that. But what we do is we dynamically produce those work products for them in our native editors, which allows them to have fine-grained control over making changes to it. They can change one line, one letter. They can use our models to help them with the changes that need to occur. We can guide them to an assisted approach. And this is very different than the way that most of these providers operate, in that they tend to produce it once, and if you want to make a change, it gets reproduced again. So we're giving people this fine-grained control over what they can edit and change and so forth. That's all driven behind the scenes by our proprietary data set on the best practices and the best ways to produce this content, this SDLC content. We combine that with the context that we get from the end user and what they're trying to build. And then through a library of prompts that we are developing, we guide the model to produce the content. The way that we test that is that we're always, trying different variations of that. How do we get best quality output? And is it producing it in a fashion that's going to be meaningful for the end user? Does it make sense? Sometimes it doesn't. These things are still prone to hallucination, even with guidance from prompts that you provide and the guardrails that you may put in place to ensure that it's producing only the best possible content. It can happen. And usually what happens when these hallucinations occur, it's because of the input that's been provided by the end user. The models go for it. The input is fantasy. It recognizes that, and then it goes into this fantasy mindset where it'll start to produce content that matches that. So you have to be careful about that. And, really, it just means that we put more guardrails in place. We make sure that our prompts are very directive on explaining what it needs to do, and also providing direction on what not to produce. Don't make things up. Make sure this is a real world answer to that sort of thing.
How many actions do you have in sequence without a human in the loop?
How many desire?
Well, problem with hallucinations in these agent models is you'll have if this, then that, then that, then that, then that. And if the model has a 5% hallucination rate or 3%, then it exponentially increases as you go along. So just curious on, how much trust you put in the models, and then at what point the human is kind of managing that performance, and at what stage that comes into play before it would reach the customer. I don't know.
It's pretty rapid. So it's really just that initial interaction. So we have an agentic approach to gather that initial information about a product that you may want to build. And then once we gather that information, we're combining that with our proprietary data, and then our prompts guide the creation of the content. And so then pretty rapidly, once that human has provided that initial input, you're able to get to that editing experience and see what content has been produced. And then it's up to that person that's using the system to determine whether it's of any quality, that they want to use our models to do a full change of all the content, or they can come in and manually make updates on their own. So that it's definitely predicated on human in the loop. The expectation is that you're not quite ready to get from 0 to 1. Let's say we go from 0 to probably about 50%, and it requires the humans to come in and verify that it's actually going to help them with their project, creating their software product that much faster than they would have before. So there's always that touch point. The human might decide, no, this is great, let me go for it. Or they may decide, no, I need to do some additional fine tuning. It's really just meant to accelerate the process and get you closer to 1, so that you're not starting at 0 every single time.
How many engineers or developers or employees does this, at least your best case scenario idea here, replace? Like how many people, how many teams is this product going to essentially do the work of?
Yeah, I look at it a little differently than that. Rather than looking at, how many people it's going to replace, I tend to look at how many people it's going to aid in improving their productivity so they can get more work done. That's the way I look at it. I am not a believer that AI is this existential crisis to humanity and it's going to be this great job destroyer. On the contrary, I think it's going to be one of the greatest force multipliers that we've ever seen in human history. And our platform is proving that out. We've done some analysis that just initially we think that it's going to improve productivity by at least 50%, which will result in significantly cost reductions. I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think that we could see over time, X, 3X, 4X, maybe 10X improvements in productivity. Now, it is this idea of improving productivity and making people more productive is predicated on the concept that people need to embrace the technologies and support it. So it behooves everybody to be well-versed in the technologies and use platforms like Intelligenic's Product Studio so that they can keep up the pace with everyone that is using it. Because if you're not, then you do run the risk of, getting displaced. If you don't, and you recognize that the advantage is, then you're absolutely well positioned to be successful for the rest of your career and the rest of your life.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the force multiplier concept. I don't believe that this is going to be this, aimless world in 10 years where no one has a job. I think every technological revolution has resulted in more prosperity. This one is probably going to be a little different, but totally agree with you. I think my question was and frame it right. I think how much more productive can a person be? How many people would they have to hire to get done what they can get done with your tool? Is kind of
Yeah, we've been pretty successful with a lean team because we are drinking our own champagne where we're using, our product and our partners' models as well to make us that much more successful. It's a requirement to create our platform, that we're using it to help us generate code, that we're using it to create all of those work products that I mentioned earlier. I use it for content creation, for content marketing. Huge supporter and believer that content marketing is a great way to promote your business. It just takes a lot of time to continue to create relevant content on a regular basis, on a regular cadence. And there's like a high expectation that you keep doing it. Well, that's been absolute game changer for us to use our partner models and our tools to help us with the production of the content that we produce to continue to show our leadership in artificial intelligence and its application toward this particular workflow, the software development lifecycle.
What is your go-to-market strategy, and how has that panned out so far?
It's been great. We are using a direct marketing strategy. So what I mean by that is that we're reaching out to those key user personas that are part of our ideal customer profile. And so for us, our initial ideal customer profile is a high-tech organization building custom software that's probably mid-size to enterprise size in scale. There are many user personas, though, that can benefit from our platform. So I distinguish between the two. The ideal customer profile is the organization you might be targeting. The user persona is the individual that actually uses it, right? And so in our case, that would be anybody involved in the software development lifecycle. And that would include people like product managers, UX UI designers, for engineers, those people that are involved in the leadership of the initiatives unit. And overall, according to our research, about 30 million people worldwide that are involved in the software development lifecycle in some fashion. So huge group of people for us to offer our products to. We've decided, though, to narrow our focus because the SDLC is so expansive. We recognize it's going to take time for us to be able to build all the capabilities associated with that to address all the needs for those various different user personas, because they're slightly different, even though they're trying to accomplish the same things. Product managers' needs is a little bit different than the software engineers' needs and the activities that they need to perform. So we've decided to start at the beginning, at the discovery step of the software development lifecycle, and build our platform to support the needs of the product manager role, that product owner role. To do the direct marketing, we are huge advocates of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great platform that has really become the de facto social media platform for those doing business. And you get a lot of information about the people that are out there. So you can see pretty quickly whether they fit that ideal customer profile and that user persona. And then we just reach out. We reach out to these people and ask them if they want to learn more. And once they say that they do want to learn more, we get them on a waiting list for our product. And then, once the product's been released, our plan is to incrementally start to offer it to them. So they will, over time, will get everybody that's on our waiting list to use it. We've had great success with that. We've got nearly 1,000 people on our waiting list. And now with the product being live, we are incrementally making it available to those people on the waiting list.
Do you feel like your growth and progression over the last 2 years has been somewhat linear, or have there been pretty significant roadblocks that were tough to get around?
It's been pretty linear. Certainly, like if you were to look at the growth of the people in the waiting list, unless there's like one roadblock, everything's hard. You're starting a company, right? And it's just a matter of how fast you can figure out how to get past it. It's just it's like an unending series of roadblocks is really what it boils down to. And so when you encounter it, you try to understand what's causing it, and then you look for solutions to get you past it. I can't point to one thing. It's just, there's always something, and you don't want to spend too much time on it. You got to move quickly to be able to get past that, whether it's a technical issue or if it's a business issue, is it a people issue, right? It's like constant every day. Like I probably face that every day, all those things, and you're just like, it's just this never ending problem solving exercise.
What's the biggest problem you're working to solve right now?
The biggest problem we're looking to solve right now is to make enhancements that we need to make based on the initial feedback that we got. So what I would say to any entrepreneur that's about to start, their own company and build a product, be prepared. What you release that first time, that is not the final product. You're never done. But you need to get it into your customers' hands, your users' hands as swiftly as possible so you can get that real world feedback and then you can act on it. And then it allows you to adjust what you're building, maybe your business, so that you can get closer and closer to product market fit. Now, I have a different belief on product market fit. I think a lot of times people talk of it as if it's this end goal. I think that it's always evolving. I think that product market fit is a snapshot in time that, you've got to the point where you are truly meeting the needs of all of those potential users and those customers, and you've addressed it, and now they're willing to pay you for it, right? But if you look at any successful company, they don't just stop. When you're done, oh, okay, great. It's an annuity. I'm just going to get paid for the rest of my life. It doesn't work that way. You have to constantly innovate. You have to constantly enhance. You got to be ahead of what your customers' needs might be and identify those needs before they even realize it's a true need, right? And then offer your product to meet that. So our biggest challenge right now is not taking that feedback that we've got from our initial launch and making that a reality for the next version of the product so that we can get closer and closer to that initial product market fit state. And then it continue to evolve for the next product market fit and so forth.
Do you think about competition at all? Do you think about moat?
All the time. You have to, because you can get yourself stuck in this track where you might be too similar, right? And then it's like, okay, well, you have the immediate barrier then is someone's already established. Why are they going to change and decide to go with your product? The way that I think about it for us is that, how are we different? And I think about it in three ways. The first and most important thing that we're different, the way that we differentiate ourselves is through our global knowledge base of SDLC best practices and content related on creating the best work products. We will be different in that we will continue to accumulate the inputs and the outputs that our end users are able to either provide from an input perspective or the outputs that they're able to create, work products that produce. Assuming they allow us to, we're very cognizant of that. People have to be aware that we intend to use that to make our data that much better for the future, right? Not only for them, but for other customers. If they're okay with that, we then make it available in an anonymized fashion so that there's no risk of releasing anything that's sensitive in nature, right? Pretty consistent model for most AI companies to do. If you allow us to, we use that to make our platform better, right? That's the idea. And so our intent is to continue to accumulate that information over time so that we can eventually offer the greatest corpus of software development lifecycle information available on the planet. And this is not trivial because if you think about data in general, only about 20% of the world's data is actually publicly available. The rest is all private. It's either you and I keeping it because we don't want to share it, or it's, behind corporate firewalls and things like that. And so you just can't get access to it. None of the other competitors in my space will have access to that. But by virtue of people allowing us to reuse the information that they provide and that they create with our platform, we will have a very unique data set that no one else will have available to unless you are a subscriber of the Intelligenic product studio. So that's number one. Number two is our comprehensive nature, in that we're not just going to ultimately focus on one aspect of the SDLC. Like right now, Code Gen gets the most attention. Everybody's talking about how great GPT-5 is now and producing code and the other models, right? That's not what we're doing. We're intending to offer this comprehensive experience that truly gets you from 0 to 1. And then the third thing that really makes us different is our ability to integrate with other third-party SDLC tools that our end users may already be using, and then we orchestrate the operation of them. So all that dynamically created content that we generate in our editor, we can then make available in these other tools that they may already know and be familiar with and are comfortable using. But our platform will integrate with them and allow us to orchestrate the operation to dynamically produce that content in those other tools. So imagine you use Jira, which most people do to manage their software development products. And if you have to create Jira tickets, it can be pretty cumbersome. But our intent is to dynamically create all the content required to go into those Jira tickets and be able to automate the production of that content within Jira, dynamically generating potentially thousands of tickets, which would take you thousands of hours to write if you don't have a tool to help you with that. And that's just one example. Our intent is to integrate with more and more of the tools related to the SDLC, including Figma, VS Code, potentially Selenium. There's lots of tools that are utilized at various different stages of the SDLC. So it's a combination of those three things that make us very different than anything else on the market.
Jumping back to that first example you gave of what separates you, just using your customers' data to improve your model and getting access to that 80% of private code base that's nobody has access to. How have those conversations been getting a customer to agree to share the data? Is that a pretty common conversation they're having? Is that something that you don't see a lot of objections around, or are people pretty nervous around that?
I see less objections now than I did when I started my journey, because that was top of mind. Because everybody was starting to realize what it takes to make these models really work. There's still people that will opt out. There's others that understand the benefits of being able to provide that data, because it's only going to improve what they get in the future. So it's becoming more and more acceptable to receive that sort of data, for sure.
What's next? So it sounds like you are working through this discovery product that kind of maps out everything for the team, the product manager, the developers, and you're going to be working on each step. It sounds like you haven't rolled out every step yet, but you're working on that. Is that kind of the pipeline ahead?
Yeah, the most immediate thing is getting ready for our MVP release, where we will be fully commercializing the product and making Intelligenic's product studio available for any customer. Our plan for that is the October timeframe. So we've got a lot of work to do between now and then. In the meantime, we are sharing it with all the people on our waiting list. And quite frankly, anybody that reaches out to me and is interested, you'll have an opportunity to get early access to the product. And our intent is to take all that feedback that we get during that period of time leading up to our MVP release and just make the product that much better, so that we can meet the needs of all of the users at that time frame. And then we'll continue to scale and offer more and more capabilities to address design, the user experience, UI aspects of the software development lifecycle, code, quality assurance testing, and deployment as well.
This podcast is named Peaking for a variety of reasons, but 3 reasons, I guess. But one of them is just reaching a pinnacle in your career, really having or personal life, either one, and just, reaching these peaks of discovery or happiness or gratification. What have been a few examples of peaks that you've realized on this journey so far?
Yeah, that's a great question, because as entrepreneurs and founders, I'm sure many of them will attest to this, it's hard to recognize because you're always dealing with like that constant problem solving, right? But they're there, and you owe it to yourself to recognize it. It's so important to realize that and acknowledge it, not only for yourself, but everybody on your team as well. So I think the biggest several peaks, and they've happened pretty recently, getting our first customer, that was huge. And this is even before we're done with the product. Yeah, that's great. That was super exciting. Like, not a moment I will ever forget, for sure. And second thing, launching the product and actually having people outside of our team use it and give us feedback, that was massive. That's huge. Like, everything that went into getting that done and everything that went into getting that first customer as well, just huge. Herculean efforts to make all of that happen. I think about like getting the first person to commit to working with me for equity only for an undetermined amount of time. That is massive. Getting my first investor, huge. Getting confirmation when I interviewed the first 100 people before we'd even written it, and getting the validation that, yeah, no, if you solve this problem the way you're talking about it, absolutely, I will buy it. Getting that sort of validation, it's massive. But it's hard to, it's hard. I should say it's easy to lose sight of that. You owe it to yourself to recognize those moments when they occur. Don't dwell on it, because like you could sit there for too long, of course, but just you need to recognize, because it takes those moments of recognition for you to make this journey a possibility, because it is incredibly hard. It's the hardest thing you will ever do professionally. If you don't recognize those moments, it's going to be more of a slog than it already is to get this thing built and to make your vision a reality.
You got to celebrate those wins. That was something I really learned in my first couple management experiences, is how important it is to morale for team performance. It's just so significant. You just think, we're here to do our job, do your job well. All's good. We get paid. but there's so much more to it. Just the human aspect of building businesses and building teams and making people better or helping them reach their full potential. Celebrating wins is a huge missed opportunity if you're not doing that as a business owner
My
or
gosh. Yeah.
a boss, or a
Right.
founder.
Right. And it goes beyond just celebrating those wins on things that, you might have personally accomplished, right? It's
Exactly.
recognizing the wins, the accomplishments of your team members and the people that are helping you to get to the macro recognition of the vision, right? That's so important.
Even if it's not a huge win for you, but you know that they worked hard on it, and you have to dole out that recognition. It just makes such a difference. People to some extent live for that. We are a species of validation, and there's an evolutionary reason behind it. And if you're not playing that game, you're missing out on additional performance. Really appreciates the conversation. Looking forward to hearing news, and definitely we'll keep an eye on updates from the company pending any releases. Where can people find you? Where can people sign up for the waiting list?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity to share that. So the company name is Intelligenic. Our website is intelligenic.ai. So think intelligence and photogenic combined into one word. That's the way that you should be thinking about the company. You can go to our website, and from there you can register for the waiting list on the website. It'll indicate, do you want to participate in the beta, basically. Select that, give me your name and your email, and then you're on our list, and we'll be reaching out to get you to access the platform as soon as possible.
And your whole company's code base.
What's that again? My whole company's code base. You're going to be able to interact with the front end piece of it. All that stuff behind the scenes, though, we keep close tabs.
To sign up as a beta user, they have to contribute their whole company's code base.
Oh, that would be amazing if they want to do that. But not necessary. Not necessary. But the more information you provide to my platform, and this is the case for any AI model that you interact with, it's just going to improve the outputs that you're trying to generate. So if you provide more information, it allows us to get more context about what you're trying to create. That means we can help you make that code base that much better if that's what you're looking for, or create a new one altogether.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds like you have quite the journey ahead of you. So really excited to watch the progress. Thanks so much for coming on, and would love to have you back on when you hit the next milestone and talk about it and what comes after that.
Be great. Thanks so much, Wyatt. It's been a great conversation for me too, and I'm happy to come back anytime.
Awesome. Thank you.